This is the Astrology and Tarot Show with Jessica Adams.
Thanks, Shane. So welcome to your stars, and also something new for you. Shane and I have had fun recently at Rock Stars, which is a new podcast mixing music with astrology and tarot every week. So if you missed the interviews with Glenn Matlock from the Sex Pistols and Blondie, or Rick Nielsen from Cheap Trick, you can catch up online. Coming soon, lots more interesting bands, and every week your horoscope in a shorter version. You can find it at mixcloud.com.
Here is your astrology and tarot for the week beginning September 8. There is plenty of information about your tarot on my website, and it is Aries the Star, Taurus the Hermit, Gemini the World, Cancer the Ace of Pentacles, Leo the Lovers, Virgo the Emperor, Libra the Hierophant, Scorpio the Moon, Sagittarius the Ace of Cups, Capricorn the Two of Cups, Aquarius the Queen of Pentacles, and Pisces the Ace of Wands.
So Aries, well, Neptune in Aries allows you to use your ESP with questions about your reputation, your image, photographs, YouTube clips, and so on. Your gut feelings, hunches, omens, or psychic information is just as important as rational thinking. So you need to honor this side of your life this week because you are in the spotlight. You have Neptune, Chiron, and Saturn all in your first house, which is all about what Google says about you, how you look on social media, and so on. And also how you front up to the world in a normal mirror. At the moment, you're going through a couple of cycles. One of them is also about the group, and it's very much about where the power is or where the control is. And you really have to choose the group that's going to empower you the most. There are currently all sorts of waves and ripples going through your horoscope that say it is all about you and how you look, and that's going to take some time for you to sort out. But also you have to look at the way that the reins are being shared or held within the circle or a bunch of circles that overlap each other. And you also need to play this for the long game, Aries, because I can see in your horoscope coming up in early 2026, January and February, you have a lot of patterns there which suggests that you may go back and reboot with particular friends or allies. You may rethink the way that you're handling what I would call a frenemy, which is a Nancy Mitford word for half friend, half enemy. And I would also, if I were you, be thinking about any events that are in your diary or calendar that are coming up by February 2026. Clearly, at the moment, everything is all up in the air and you don't really have a game plan yet, but it will develop. In the meantime, you need to play to your strengths and look at what it is about you that people most instantly recognize. Now, being an Aries, you're probably one of those driven, energetic people who front up, go front and center and into the front line, which is all well and good. But is there also a different way to play it? That's really the question for you over the next 7 days. Taurus, if you can combine your left brain and your right brain together, you will make real progress with a matter that you cannot talk about. Maybe you talk about it to one other confidant, like a counselor or a priest or a best friend, but generally this is a solitary thing for you. It's handled by yourself in your own time. It may be as deep as religion. It may actually be therapy, hypnosis, the tarot, psychics, and so on. This is the 12th house of your chart, which is ruled by Aries. And we have a lot of action in that zone of your horoscope this week, suggesting that you do actually need to be by yourself. And you may have a funny way of organizing that for yourself so that the door is closed and you get more solo time. This is all quite necessary because until you go through this inner process of figuring things out with your soul and your psychology, you're not really going to be at your 100% best when it comes to changing the outside of yourself, because that's the other cycle that's going on now. Uranus in Taurus is all about your reputation and your appearance and your profile. And although you want to be free here, you want to be free from something or someone or set free by it, you can't really see the results that you deserve in terms of feeling liberated unless you've actually gone through everything on the inside as well. So this is a classic cycle for people to address problems that they can't talk about or for a bit of soul searching about who or what they believe in. Taurus, is up to you, but this week you will be given that chance. Gemini, if you've ever shaken up a snow dome, and watch the flakes whirling around before they settle, you'll have a clear picture of what this Uranus in Gemini cycle is like. Your face or name is in the snow dome, maybe your name and your title, and it's all change. This is an odd cycle which stops in November, then it restarts in April 2026. It may already have shown up as anything from a change of hairdresser to a reboot of the person that you used to be online. Whatever people associated with you now looks like history. Uranus is about who or what sets you free, Gemini. And from April next year, this cycle really sets in, taking you way past the 2030s. So when you think about your profile this week, you're probably also thinking short term, but your horoscope is saying this is long term. It's a bit like rehatching from an egg. For some of you, this is about substantial weight loss, which is written in your stars. In other cases, you're looking at a totally different career path for yourself, or a flip around or a turnaround from the way that people used to talk about you or think about you in recent years. But the accent is on being free, as I've said, and Independence Day. And this week is all about yet another Independence Day, which will come from you saying no as much as you might be hearing no from other people. And it's very much about the way that you look. Cancer. In astrology, the big picture affects the individual horoscope, and we are now heading for October, November, and front page headlines about the share markets worldwide and cryptocurrency. With Pluto in Aquarius making patterns in your finance horoscope, this is the week when you will do the really early number crunching or fact finding about your bank account, your house or apartment, shares, business, valuables, and so on. January and February 2026, as you may already know, will finally deliver some of the most important financial, business, and property issues of next year. So you'll start by hitting the ground running as you go into 2026. This week is a valuable time to research money-related questions and to do your homework on everything from interest rates to legal matters. For some of you, this is personal. It may involve a will, a legacy, or a joint bank account, a trust fund, and so on. At the moment, there are larger questions here about who or what is in control, who or what has the power, and it's not clear-cut or straightforward. You can never really avoid politics with people on this cycle, even if they are in the family circle or in a partnership with you, because that's what Pluto is all about. However, you can also sit down and do a bit of harder thinking later on. At the moment, you're dealing with something you've known about for ages, but this week your chart is telling you that you can actually move the pieces around on the chessboard a bit later on and think about the strategies or the games now. It is very important, and as I've said, early next year starts a whole new era for you. Leo, the North Node in the sign of Pisces, in your house of finance, business, charity, tax, shopping, ownership, and real estate, is all about going back 18 or 19 years into the past, understanding that you set something in motion then with your karma that is now rolling around backwards in this week and this year in particular. You won't really be out of this until you get to July 2026, Leo, and it doesn't matter if you're gaining from the cycle or whether you're perhaps repaying spiritually or maybe literally. What your chart is saying is that all this started a very long time ago, and it's typical of the nodes that no matter what you say and do to make a difference to things, you still hear and see others reciting the same script or going through the same scene of the same film. And if you even go back to your emails 18 or 19 years ago, you may see a familiar theme here. What you can do is think ahead to 2026 and really plan for the second half of next year, because by then this cycle will have stopped, but also you'll be free of Saturn in Pisces, the same zone of your chart. And Saturn is notorious for making you wait, for making you patient, and for restricting you and limiting you. It is, after all, the ringed planet, and the situation now is quite ring-fenced for you. But it does stop. It'll stop in February next year. And then from July next year, you go into the really big change, which is no more repetition from the past. Virgo. Travel or relocation abroad is very likely from November 2025 to April 2026, or you will be laying the groundwork for a future trip or move. Sometimes the movement at the station, to quote Banjo Patterson, is actually in your own town or city as foreigners swirl around your life at home. This is probably the final cycle of your life, and this week you'll be shown how to sign off from it in terms of what they call Uranus in Taurus, the cycle where everything and everybody that's foreign to you spells radical change. In fact, by Easter next year, it's gone. But at the moment, what you're doing this week is seeing what you were being offered in terms of Independence Days, plural, because you've had quite a few of them ever since this cycle began. Some of you have actually moved countries. Some of you have entered into relationships or marriages with foreign people. That's just one example of it. At the moment, you are dealing with the very end of this cycle, but it's typical of Uranus in Taurus to spring a surprise at the last minute. So November to April is very likely to turn things upside down again. And it may be anything from another country's decisions on visas and passports to earth changes, which have affected so many people this year, particularly in the States. So whatever you're looking at this week, you're thinking about it or commencing with it, needing some sort of backup, plan B or plan C, instead of thinking that everything is always going to be run according to plan as it was last time. It would be wise, astrologically speaking, to account for a few more possibilities. Libra. Uranus in Gemini in your 9th house is the revolution with the World Wide Web and through the world of books and also the media, education, study and teaching. And if these involve you now, this week will be intriguing because you'll be doing a lot of rejecting, as perhaps also experiencing rejection yourself. And the upshot is it sets you free. When you hear no or say no, it allows you to break with the past and to do things very differently in a way that gives you a lot more space and independence for the long term. And again, this would be with the world of books, the World Wide Web itself, perhaps the media, education, study and teaching. This sign of your chart also concerns foreigners and foreign countries, and it's the same story this week. What's going on here is a real break with the past by 2026 so that you don't do things the same way that you always did. And there may be one country in particular, one nationality or one accent or language that spells it out to you over the next 7 days that going by the old rule book isn't going to work. Assuming or guessing that things are going to be the way that they always were is very, very unwise on this transit, as usually the last thing that you expect is the first thing that happens. And it's quite tricky as an astrologer to say it's definitely going to be this scenario or that scenario because it's in the nature of the beast for it to be genuinely unpredictable. But if you are making plans in these areas, if you are perhaps thinking about university next year or college, you're thinking about welcoming a traveller or a migrant or perhaps going abroad yourself, it's as wise to know that this cycle is notorious for pulling the rug. Scorpio. Well, this week is perfect for finding out everything you needed to know about your career but were afraid to ask. And this also applies to unpaid work, academia or study. What you're going through is Saturn, Chiron and Neptune all travelling through the 6th house of workload. For some of you, this is not paid at all, but in most cases, it's about your profession. And you may be looking at the consequences of retiring or resigning, or just doing your homework differently with your boss, staff, client, colleague, and so on. One important issue which relates to your ambitions will go to the top of your list, and a lot of phone calls or website visits will follow later on. What appears to be a turning point in April 2026 starts this week. So later on, you begin to see how this part of September was really contributing to big changes around Easter. This is the cycle for people who want to serve, to do their duty, and to just show up with more meticulous attention to detail than everybody else. If you have anything in Virgo in your natal chart, that's far more likely, as you are here to work for other people. This triple cycle, Saturn, Chiron and Neptune, all in the 6th, may be ringing big bells for those of you who are possessed of Virgo factors, as this week you are being told that you can serve others and you should be serving them, but you also need to serve your own health. This brings me to all of those questions that so many of you have on my website about your physical or mental health concerns. And what is going on is asking you to use a triple approach or a three-pronged approach to what is now facing you. Some of you are already doing that, but when you get Saturn, Chiron, and Neptune together, part of you is asked to be patient and play a waiting game. Another part of you is asked to experiment and see what you can get away with. And finally, the other approach would be to find a way to escape from the real world. Whatever's going on for you, that three-pronged approach will suit what's happening in your astrological chart. Sagittarius. Keep your work options open now, and it's the same with unpaid work, university or college, as karma is here from 18 or 19 years before. The South Node in Virgo asks you to remember what you are owed or what you owe spiritually from that time. There will be a lot of questions this week and apparently some conclusions, but they are subject to change. And the truth is you won't get out of this loop until July 2026. What you set in motion all those years ago may have been while you were a student in a different profession, or for some of you, it will be with exactly the same company. But what you're seeing here is a repetition or a cycling through as this part of your chart moves backwards, never forwards. So that might explain a few things to you this week, Sagittarius, about why aspects of your unpaid work, like housework, for example, or your career, seem to be the same old, and whatever you say and do doesn't really affect the outcome. As you do this, of course, you realise what some of you may have woken up to a few months ago, that you can change on the inside. When you can't really alter the shape of what's going on around you, you can definitely transform your attitude towards it and become a happier person because of that, and maybe become a better person as well. That's also going on with this nodal cycle. It is well known not only in astrology, but also in stone circles around the world, as it's amazing how many of them add up to 18 or 19. At the moment, though, rather than thinking about places like Stonehenge, you have to think about how you're going to cycle through tomorrow and the rest of this week. And the answer is, if you've not already looked at how you could be more philosophical about what's going on, more cheerful about it, or even use the repetition, then now might be the time. Capricorn. Jupiter in the sign of Cancer in your 7th house of partnership is a blessing. All kinds of partnership, duets, double acts, and couples. If you marry now, for example, your husband or wife will help in expanding your world. You are the romance novel or the chick lit book that everybody wants to hear about by June 2026. If you're single, eligible, and take the opportunity. This lucky cycle also works with enemies, opponents, or rivals. So even an involvement with a difficult person in your life will be a blessing. A weak opponent is a very common outcome of this cycle. So, for example, you win the election because the other side is so lame. That can happen too. But more positively, two-way streets are where it needs to be for you this week. Lots of you are already on one. And what you're being shown is a solution which you can take by the rest of this year into July 2026, or actually a golden opportunity. So typically, for example, you'll come across somebody who'll balance the scales with you in a way that enables you to pursue something quite special, even though you're very different. Legal contracts and undertakings are very common on this transit, and maybe you've already signed your name. If not, one could be appearing for you over the next few months. And it would be with a person who is coming from another direction to you, but is absolutely on the level with you. There is equilibrium here, symmetry, and harmony. If you're single and you want a partner, this is the best time to go looking for one in 12 years. Jupiter in Cancer takes that long to cycle around your chart, and lots of astrologers will be telling you the same thing. If you need a psychic take on that, you can use the tarot on my website. Aquarius. Well, this triple Aries transit that I've been talking about this week shows up as your brother, sister, neighbour, and or cousin. It's complicated and it's demanding, but it can work out long term. If you both or all put the effort in and you manage to pull off that incredible combination of discretion with patience, you will be onto a winner with your sibling, your cousin, or people next door or across town. Neighbours in astrology can also sometimes mean neighbouring countries, so we could be talking here about France and England. But however you interpret it, and it's personal for you, if you have anything in Gemini in your birth chart, it will also change your life. This week is all about thinking about this person and how you're going to make it work between now and next year, because this cycle is pretty long and it does require patience. When you go through Saturn, in Aries in particular, you always hit a ring-fence situation which limits you and restricts you. And consequently, there's only so far you can go in terms of your brother, sister, neighbour or cousin without hitting a brick wall. And you know this pretty well by now, but you are also being offered an escape. There's something about this connection which has nothing to do with the real world and allows you an outlet or an alternative way of going about your business. So, for example, you may face up to the reality of the calendar, the clock, or the waiting game with this person, but also be able to take advantage of a way through and a way out that I would call a holiday from reality. Pisces. The South Node in Virgo, your opposite sign, is about a romantic, business, professional, or perhaps a platonic partnership. It's about a two-way street, a set of scales in front of you with you and the other person. This point in your chart moves backwards, so life 18 or 19 years ago has a big karmic pull. You may know each other very well, to say the least. It could be your ex-wife, for example, or it's your business partner. Maybe it's a more unusual kind of double act. For example, the two of you may share the same home, if not the same bedroom. However you are identifying with this theme about the other side or your other half, what you're going through at the moment is a kind of cycling back so that you can make a better future. Therefore, there's not a lot that you can do on a day-to-day basis this week. You're always being pulled back to karma because you owe or you are owed from whatever happened 18 or 19 years ago in a very similar situation, maybe even with the same person. It doesn't really matter how you respond to it immediately, but it's more developing a reaction to it long term. So paying attention to the limitations and the restrictions isn't that useful this week, as long term you're going to need a different kind of mental toolkit. This person is not actually the story, and so directing your attention towards them is not going to help you get very far. In fact, the real theme or the real soundtrack is your own past. And some of you will know instantly what was going on 18 or 19 years ago. There may have been a divorce, a separation, an engagement, or a marriage, or maybe you signed on the dotted line with a work partner. You can always check your email to find out, or old correspondence. But understanding that this is karmic in nature, and this very old cycle has been known probably since the time of Stonehenge, is one way to make it make sense to yourself this week. I'm going to finish up this podcast by talking about the nodes, which I've been mentioning for quite a few different zodiac signs. In astrology, we have something called the North Node and the South Node, which move backwards through the zodiac signs and never forwards. This is why when you hit a nodal cycle, you find repetition in your life that takes you back thematically and symbolically to what was going on 18 or 19 years before. In India, they call the nodes Rahu and Ketu. They were also very well known in the Middle Ages, and if you pick up something called an astrolabe, you will see the dragon's head and the dragon's tail engraved at the top. This is the other name for the North Node and South Node. The North Node is the dragon's head, and it eats the dragon's tail, the South Node. If you're into your astrology, you'll know all about your North Node and South Node signs, which show your last past life. Even if you're not into astrology, you can find out at a glance by going to my website and using the lookup tables, or just going to specialist sites like Cafe Astrology. The signs will tell you why you're back here, and the signs are always opposite each other. So understanding that may give you a few clues about why you've been placed in situations with particular people that you find impossible to get out of. The reason for that is that as a soul group, you have made a contract to come back to get closure. And that is why you're born into the age that you're born into and surrounded by the people that you find yourself next to. Sometimes a dream can reveal to you what the past life was. So discovering your node sign, North Node and South Node, can be a stepping stone to that. So your dreaming mind can present to you a likely scenario from last time. There are some pretty common outcomes of these nodal signs. If you have, for example, Aries, Libra, North Node and South Node, or South Node and North Node, your last past life was very likely to have been in the Army, the Navy, or the Air Force. And the person that you are with now, or the person that you have separated from or divorced, was very likely to have been with you or against you. That's a classic Aries Libra outcome. I won't go through all the signs for you as they are written about at length on my website, which is jessicaadams.com. But it's an interesting thing to know that they can also move through your horoscope as well, which is why so many people at the moment are stuck with recurring, repetitive health issues, be it physical health or mental health. But the good news is, despite this Virgo health repetition, you get to the end of it by the middle of next year. And between now and then, you will find some incredible ways of managing it that take you so much higher in your life than if it had not been the case at all. Those are the rules with the nodes. The work gets done on the inside and we evolve. Thanks for listening. Don't forget, if you like music as well as astrology, you can pick up the Rockstars podcast, and I'll see you next week.